I really appreciate the opportunities that America provided my family, coming with literally nothing but the clothes on their back, to the point where my grandfather could start pouring cement, work himself up through the company, buy the company, and then sell it in the 80s, retiring in his 50s as a multimillionaire and leaving me and my mother and everybody in my family an inheritance. So here.
Jim Forsythe, Chair of Citizens for Sound Money. We're here today with Executive Director Marian Ward, and pleased to have Daniel Diaz, co-founder and CEO of Mining Life. So Daniel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jim. It's a pleasure.
So I want to refer people to, you did an interview with Mike Sancho, and I watched / listened to it the last couple of days, including while mowing the yard. Really great interview. You spent a lot of time on your background, which is very important to how you got to where you're at.
Yeah.
So I want to highlight a few of those things. First off, Cuba, because your story of Cuba reminded me of my story of, I studied Russian in high school. I went to the Soviet Union in 84 and 86, and that really changed me. So, to be a believer in free market. So why don't you talk about your story of Cuba?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So my family, both my dad and my mom are Cuban, but my dad's family left before Fidel took over. My mom was actually one of the first communist babies. She was born in 1959, which is the year Fidel Castro took over. And I remember growing up hearing stories from my mother, my grandfather, about how we had land, business, and so forth in Cuba. And then when Fidel took over, in communism, there's no such thing as private property. Everything was confiscated. We basically had nothing. We were equal. Everything was equal. So it was just redistribution of wealth. And what really broke the camel's back, the last straw, was my grandfather wanted to buy extra meat in Cuba for my family. So he paid a little extra to the butcher. He gave him extra meat, and then in every single block in a communist country, this in the Soviet Union, in North Korea, Cuba, it doesn't matter the country, there's a communist informant. The communist informant heard about the extra meat that my grandfather bought, and the communist police came, took him to jail. When he was released, they said, "We got to go." So they packed up as much as they could. When they got to the airport, everything was confiscated except for the clothes on their back, and they flew to Miami. And if it wasn't for friends and family that were already here, they would have been on the streets. So they moved into a small studio apartment. My grandfather, my grandmother, my aunt, and my mother. And my grandfather had a construction business. He worked in Cuba. So he had to start all over. So he started pouring cement in the 60s, making sidewalks in Miami. And that's really where the story of my family success came. I really appreciate the opportunities that America provided my family, coming with literally nothing but the clothes on their back, to the point where my grandfather could start pouring cement, work himself up through the company, buy the company, and then sell it in the 80s, retiring in his 50s as a multimillionaire and leaving me and my mother and everybody in my family an inheritance. So hearing those stories about how Cuba before Fidel was prosperous. The Cuban peso was worth more than the dollar. We were back in the gold standard back then. So the Cuban peso was actually minted by the US Treasury. And how, just how lively it was, technology and so forth, and how that was all taken away because of socialism and communism. And then the opportunities that America provided because of freedom. I promised myself at a young age, I'll never allow what happened to my family's country to happen to my country. So at a young age, I dedicated my life to politics. And I was a political consultant for pretty much 21 years before I changed my career into blockchain technology.
Yeah, that was so that experience with you is something that overlaps with us. The other part was getting into politics. You did it right away, because I went to the Soviet Union, and I was like, I want to defend against the communist threat, because the Soviet Union was what it was back then. So I joined the military, and then it was only later that I realized if I really want to defend against communism, I need to get into politics.
Yeah.
So I ran for office and got into the state Senate. But then from there, you got into, crypto as a way to get economic freedom. Similar for me, you said something in the interview that really resonated with me, which is where I'm at right now, which is I feel like I can do more to help people outside of politics than through the political process.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was anti-crypto until I was anti-crypto because I became a stockbroker. There's a lot of history. If you want to watch more detail about my background, watch the video. I'm just going to touch on points here. So I became a stockbroker while I was in grad school. It was a 3-year I got into finance while I was in grad school, and then I became a stockbroker right after I graduated. And by being an insurance agent and then becoming a stockbroker, I got a full education on the global monetary system and how fiat plays a role and how the entire world runs on money, right? So when you'll see in the interview, I got a business partner in 2020. I hurt my back. I needed help running my businesses. And she came around and started telling me, hey, you should look at Bitcoin. This is March of 2020. I'm completely anti-crypto because I'm like, oh, it's a tulip situation. It's a farce. It's fake. It's a scam. It has nothing backing it. Much like the US dollar today. But that's what I thought. And for months, she just kept hounding me. It's like, hey, you should really take a look at it. And Bitcoin was at $5,000 back then. I wish I would have bought some then, but I would say no. And then she teamed up with a buddy of mine named Dan. And around August, September, I told him, look, I'm tired of you guys talking about crypto. I'm not going to get into it. So Dan called me. He's like, hey, I get you're frustrated, but I got 2 videos. All I'm asking is you watch these 2 videos. And if you're not convinced about what cryptocurrency can do, we'll stop talking to you. I'm like, fine. I didn't need to watch the second video. I just watched the first. And the first video was by Don Tapscott. I believe the title of the video is How Blockchain is Changing Business in the World. And the whole video is basically about privacy, the immutability of the blockchain, all of the benefits of cryptocurrency, Satoshi Nakamoto. But the last portion of that video, he's talking about land deeds and putting contracts on the blockchain. And he mentioned that 70% of the world's population have tenuous deeds and titles, meaning that they don't actually own their land, it's a lease. Like in China, they lease the land to the families for 99 years. And then in a situation in Nicaragua where, there was the revolution and they took actual land deeds, tore it up, put their political friends' names on the deed, went with guns like, hey, this deed says my friend owns this land, get off. And when he said that, he's like, what if we put the deeds on the blockchain? And a light bulb went off. I'm like, holy cow. Because of the immutability, the fact that it can't be deleted, if we had this technology back in the 50s, when Fidel Castro came around, and let's say we overthrew Cuba and my family wanted to go back and either get that land back or get reparations from the government, we could, because we can show on the blockchain proof, or even 100, 200 years from now, we can show my descendants that this land was owned by my family and we want it back. When I realized that, it hit me that blockchain technology can provide more economic, political, and personal freedom than any political activity in man, just because of the immutability, because of the privacy, the decentralization, that the government doesn't control the money, and which is a key component of sound money. I think that's something you mentioned earlier. And when I realized that, I went from being anti-crypto to pro-crypto in October, went down the rabbit hole, and I knew nothing about crypto mining. So in October, I'm like, what is this thing about crypto mining? I learned what it was. By November, I was mining myself. And by February 1st, I launched Mining Life, a crypto mining company. So I was a quick study, and I rededicated my career from politics, because up until that point, I had my political consulting business, a few other entrepreneurial things. But since then, this is all I do full time, because I truly do believe that the innovations of blockchain technology, the decentralization away from government control, can provide more economic freedom. And through providing economic freedom, it's going to provide political freedom. Because when you have real money, you have the freedom to spend it and do what you want with it. I think they go hand in hand. Current fiat currency is a debt-ridden system, and when you have debt, you're not free. And even if you look at old texts and scriptures in Jewish and Christian history, debt is a bad thing, usury laws and so forth. And that's exactly what's happening, right? 27%. Why isn't that considered usury? That's the current economic system that we have is absolutely horrendous. It's enslaving humanity. And I think sound money is really the best way to do that. We disagree. I think Bitcoin is the best sound money. And then for me, I see gold as the new stable coin, where you take your profits from Bitcoin and put it in gold. But, that's something we can discuss a little later.
No, I love your description of blockchain. And that's, we were both in politics, right? So you can always work with people, find your area of agreement and discuss it. But and that is a great way of describing the power of blockchain, I think, and something, definitely that we agree on. So something you mentioned about in that other interview that I really liked was you talked about what is sound money, store of value, medium of exchange, but you also threw in another attribute and, remind us what that was.
Decentralization without government control, right? Because we had the bartering system, which was completely decentralized. And then Mike Maloney, you actually, first time we talked, I asked for some education resources. Thank you for pointing out Mike Maloney and his video series. He talks about how gold and silver was used as a medium exchange, because let's say I had cows and you had chickens, you didn't want my cows, we couldn't barter. So gold came in. But gold and silver is completely centralized. We didn't need the government to print it. We didn't need the government to control it. In fact, the government tries to control gold and silver, as we saw with FDR and throughout human history. The government confiscates gold and silver. And it's because it's decentralized. They have to try to take control of it. And that's a key point of sound money. The government can't make it. The government does not control it. They try to control it by confiscating it and making it legal through positive laws. And that's really, to me, one of the key components to blockchain technology as well. It's arguable if there are other mainly decentralized blockchains. I think there's an argument that can be said that Bitcoin is the only truly decentralized blockchain, because there is no central authority, there is no foundation that controls the code. There's no DAO. It's just the miners, and if you get 51% of consensus of the node operators, then the consensus happens. But I don't know if there really is a truly decentralized blockchain other than Bitcoin, because Satoshi Nakamoto, who is he? Who are they? We don't know. Gold, it's just natural. It's as Mike Maloney says, the gold is created through supernovas and distributed throughout the universe. So it's incorruptible, just like I think Bitcoin's incorruptible. But yeah, that's really one of the key components, I think, that separates sound money, other than scarcity, other than and so forth, the decentralization of gold and Bitcoin, and even silver.
Yeah, and outside the control of governments. I really think that ought to become the official part of the official definition of sound money. It's something we talk about, but I've never included it in the description of sound money. And I think it's right. I think governments throughout the ages have always corrupted it. The Romans clipping coins. It just happens time and time again. So
well, I appreciated that. Sorry, I appreciated that perspective, because people we would agree with on a lot of things. So they're not they're my 80% friend is not my enemy. But I would disagree with trying to push particularly the federal government to go back to gold standard for that reason, because they've always messed it up. And how do we know? I mean, there hasn't been an audit of Fort Knox in 50 years. And even then it was very suspect as to whether they really had the gold. And how do they get the gold? At times they've confiscated, they've incentivized Americans to give it to them, and then also made it illegal to own. So when the government controls the gold, they control the people as well. So I do appreciate that perspective, because I like I said, a lot of like-minded people really would push for that. And
I think a lot of people don't, a lot of people think government defines what money is, and you're absolutely right. No, money arose naturally.
Yep.
Money was a creation by the people, and that's why you and I may disagree on Bitcoin, or have slightly different takes on Bitcoin. It doesn't matter to me. It's the people decide on what money is.
Yeah.
So if people decide Bitcoin is money and they use it a lot, then it is. But just the government, we got to keep it out of the control of the government for sure.
Right.
100%. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's another area where I think people believe we may be combative or against something. I'm for money that people exchange and get out of the government system. So we are very crypto friendly in that sense, that it is very much outside of the control of government. At least not that obviously the CBDCs are their own beast, but the blockchain technology, like you're talking about, particularly for Bitcoin and some of the others.
Yeah, and it has to be decentralized, right? So Bitcoin, the reason why the Bitcoin network is so strong, I mean, it's almost $1 trillion asset. It's because it's decentralized, right? Satoshi Nakamoto created a blockchain to where it's trustless. You don't need to trust anyone. By the government confiscating gold or creating the gold standard, it's not decentralized anymore. It's now a centralized currency because you're taking a certificate against money and you're saying this certificate equals X amount of money, whether it's 1-to-1 or a fractionalized version, right? So I think before we got on the call, I was talking about how BRICS is wanting to announced 2 days ago that they're going to be doing a gold-backed currency. And it wasn't really a disagreement. We were just talking. I said, look, I think like Mike Maloney and his Hidden Secrets of Money series, he mentions a few times throughout the series that the raw gold, I forget the exact verbiage, it balances out, it does an accounting. It does an accounting of the entire monetary system. It soaks up the liquidity, right? That's what gold has done every single time fiat currency has collapsed. It just increases the price. Well, he also says that liquidity goes to the hardest money. Right now, the US dollar is the hardest fiat currency, right? Even though it's easy money, it's the hardest of the easy monies. But even if they do 1/1000th of a gram of gold backing bricks, that's harder than the US dollar. So I think all the liquidity is going to get sucked up into bricks. Whether I don't know how much they're going to back it by gold, but the fact that it is backed by gold, it's a type of gold standard. It's harder money than the US dollar right now. But what's harder than the gold standard? Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is probably the soundest, hardest money. I think if Bitcoin's here, I'd say gold is right here, right? And I would put silver a little further down. We can discuss silver and all that later. But I do believe Bitcoin is the best store of value. It's also probably the best sound money that can increase your wealth. While I see there's a huge battle between Bitcoin maxis and gold bugs. You know, the gold maxis and the Bitcoin maxis. I don't think that should be the case. I think it's very telling that the entire 10-episode series of Mike Maloney, the longest episode, an hour and 40-something minutes, is about cryptocurrency. All the other videos are 25 to 35 minutes. I think that the fact that he dedicated so much time to Bitcoin and HBAR and all those different blockchain technologies, and we see what's happening with Kinesis, I think at least you and so forth, and people within the gold community are seeing the value of fractionalizing on a decentralized network gold. You know, you have sound money, gold, which is decentralized on a decentralized network, which I think kind of makes it's beautiful. It combines the two technologies or the assets, to the Bitcoin asset and the gold asset together, and makes a system that we can bring back a sound money economy and replace the complete fiat standard with, I think, blockchain. What would you call it? Asset-backed digital currencies. With asset-backed digital currencies, I think we can get to a global sound money economy. And I think Kinesis is so advanced, so far ahead of all the other competitors. I think Kinesis is at the forefront of that type of technology of potentially bringing home and bringing back a sound money economy.
Yeah, now to be clear, we're supportive of all good efforts in asset-backed digital.
Yes. I'm launching it. Asset-backed digital.
Exactly. And we're talking about, right? No, but what you're saying about Bitcoin maxis, and you call them, gold maxis is a fair term, like for somebody who is like we call them the stacker crowd. You hold it, you don't own it. Like, we don't want blockchain to touch our gold. We want nothing to, those two camps may fight each other, but it shouldn't be that way. It should be,
No.
a mix of these things, a mix of views. And you may be very bullish on Bitcoin. Somebody else may be less bullish, but because it's got a shorter track record, so you might be less bullish. So balance a portfolio based on where you think the risk is, but choose to have a nice portfolio of some sound money assets for sure.
Yeah. Since I've gone down the sound money rabbit hole, that meaning gold and silver, because I've been in Bitcoin for a few years now. The way I see the role of Bitcoin and gold playing in a sound money economy is that we're not gonna. I don't use stable coins anymore. USDT, USDC, DAI, whatever, because they're inflating. If I put my cryptocurrency in a stable coin, it's losing money every day. So my solution to that is using gold-backed digital currencies to put my earnings. So anytime I trade now, instead of putting in the USDT, I take my profits and put it into PaxG on the Ethereum network. Well, PaxG is really on almost every network. It has the most liquidity for a gold-backed asset because it just performs and beats inflation. I'd rather have it there than sitting in USDT.
Yeah. Where did that thumbs up come from?
I don't know. Did I do that?
You were just so excited about what you were saying.
Yeah.
I agree, Daniel, with yourself. No.
And that's where I think we can bring in the gold maxis. If we're like, look, fine, you don't have to buy Bitcoin, but as long as you see the role that gold plays in the crypto ecosystem as the new stable coin, then I think we can all get along, right? Like Ronald Reagan said, the Big Tent Republicanism. You don't have to agree 100%, but as long as you agree, a majority, 50% or more, we're on the same side. Or even if it's just one issue, as long as we agree on one issue, we can work together. If you can agree that gold should be the stable coin for the entire crypto ecosystem, I think we have a synergistic opportunity there to bring Bitcoin maxis and gold maxis together. And perfect example of me using this. I was at the Bitcoin Energy Summit 2-3 weeks ago in Miami, and I was talking to a fellow NFT founder. He does Bitcoin mining and backs his NFTs with Bitcoin mining. And I mentioned to him I was launching a gold-backed NFT, and he was just trashing gold. Him and his main guy, they were just talking crap about gold. I'm, whoa. I get it. I know where you guys are coming from, but I'm not saying gold should replace Bitcoin. Hear me out. I'm saying when Bitcoin gets to 130,000 within the year, instead of putting it in cash, which you're going to start losing value, put it in PaxG. And they're like, why would we do that? I'm like, because gold is the oldest store of value in human history. Like, facts. That's all they said. They said facts. That's a good point. And I changed them. And they from just talking trash about gold to like, wait. Gold has a role in the blockchain. It's a new stable coin. And these Bitcoin maxis are like, you're right, that makes sense. So I think if we bring that narrative to Bitcoin maxis and gold maxis, we can start bringing the community together.
That's an excellent point because, a lot of people are doing Bitcoin. They'll see a huge run up and go, hey, I think this is overextended. So they want to, de-risk a little bit. Well, what do they put their money in? Dollars? But, how can you put your money in dollars if you believe you're doing Bitcoin because it's sound money?
Right.
So no, that's an excellent point.
That was a dilemma I found myself when I started researching gold and sound money. I've read the Bitcoin standard right when I got into crypto. And, he just basically mentioned why the gold standard failed and why Bitcoin's stronger. He doesn't really talk bad about gold. But then in this fiat standard, he really talks gold up. Saifeed Ammous, the author. And that's really where I realized, man, maybe gold has something. I learned more about PaxG because my NFT project. I'm like, okay, I hate the dollar. I think fiat should die. So where do I put my money? Why not gold? And then that's where I just kind of came up with the idea.
Yeah, no. To be honest, I haven't really researched PaxG a lot, and that's mainly because, for monetary use. For me, I believe that you should be able to, redeem it, basically turn it back into cash. And PaxG has really high redemption limits. So
Yeah, they only redeem. That's funny.
400 ounces, I think.
At 400 ounces, and I actually reached out to PAX-G about the head of their business development. I forget his name. We got on a phone call, a couple of phone calls, and he came back to me. He's like, "Well, my CEO doesn't want to do a partnership unless you can buy $1 billion worth of gold. He doesn't get out of bed unless it's $1 billion." I'm like, "Okay, apparently PAX-G isn't our partner." So thank you very much. So I walked away. So the CEO doesn't get out of bed unless there's $1 billion on the table. I'm like, "Okay, when I get there, I'll let you go." No, I'm knocking on the door. But I like PAX-G because PAX-G is the #1 asset-backed digital currency. It has the most liquidity of all the digital asset-backed digital currencies. And it's on pretty much every chain, BNB chain, Ethereum, AVAX. So, I mean, if we're going to introduce gold to the ecosystem, at least pushing the PAX-G until Kinesis or Load, or Load's already on Ethereum, but at least Kinesis, if they ever get onto the ERC20 chain, we can start pushing that. I think even Tether has a gold backed asset. They're pretty liquid, but PAX-G is the largest.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's more of a technical discussion that you can have with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that KAU, KAG's got listed on CoinMarketCap, and I know there's work to be done to be able to get it onto more exchanges. But I don't think going on to ERC20 is the plan. But
yeah, I mean, because it really comes down to liquidity. So if you're going to get on the ERC20 side, you're going to have to provide liquidity on both sides, right? So if you bring KAU from the Kinesis blockchain over to the ERC20, basically you got to burn the KAU on the Kinesis chain and mint it on the ERC20 chain, but there has to be enough liquidity so there is no loss in value. So
I want to touch on one more thing from that other interview you did.
Yeah.
That really cracked me up is when you're talking about politics, and this is something I've said in a different way, but House of Cards.
Yes.
So I've described it as a documentary, and so tell me your view on politics and House of Cards.
So Mike asked me how I enjoyed politics, right? I said it was a lot of fun. I had fun pissing off people in my 20s. But I think he's asked a little further, what was it like? I'm like, my response was, have you ever seen House of Cards? And he's like, I've seen a little bit of it. I'm like, well, I think House of Cards is the most realistic portrayal of politics of all TV shows. Better than The West Wing. Better. It is so cutthroat and so corrupt. Like I mentioned in the other interview, I saw in front of me, sitting in a boardroom, an advisor to a governor in this country. He's currently governor. Take bribes right in front of me, and this is the type of stuff that happens every single day. You don't work in politics for 21 years and do not see the corruption in front of your face. It's a lot different in this country than it is, let's say, in Africa, South America, and the developing world. It's a lot more clear, the corruption. They don't hide it as much. Here it's hidden, but if you're behind the scenes, you see it like with eyes wide open. So, but House of Cards is definitely the most realistic show I think you can compare to U.S. politics to.
Which is sad. It is sad.
It is very sad.
The part I find realistic is just that immense thirst for power.
Yep.
People say power corrupts,
and
it's power attracts the corrupted is the truth.
Yeah. Which I mentioned in my in the other interview, because being in politics, and correct me if I'm wrong, all we're doing is really studying human behaviors and human patterns, right? And if we do look throughout history, people, the most powerful countries, organizations, NGOs in human history attract some of the worst people. Wherever there's power, humanity's attracted to it because people that have that craving of power also want to control others. So anytime there's a power vacuum, I use the example of the Roman Empire collapsing. When the Roman Empire, the Western Empire collapsed, what was there? There was a vacuum, but what was there to take its place? Well, the Roman families, the Medicis and so forth that were in control of the Roman Empire, guess where they went? They became cardinals in the Vatican. They went into the one organization that had structure and some influence, and they just went in and got sucked up in there. So power and corruption, and the United States is the most powerful government in the world right now, and there's a lot of corruption, a lot of power-hungry people.
Yeah. Why don't we dive into your current project? It's the one you reached out to us on, is gold back NFTs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So my project is called MetaGold Miners Club. It is a gold-backed NFT with the vision and mission of teaching our community members the principles of sound money and the role that both gold and Bitcoin play in a sound money economy. It's the reason why I wanted to start a gold-backed NFT. The sound money thing came afterwards as I learned more about gold. But I started I got into crypto in October 2020. My first NFT that I purchased was in February of 2022. And every NFT that I own, except for that one NFT is from NFT Academy that teaches me on how to launch an NFT project. All the other NFTs I own pay me some type of yield, whether it's Ethereum or altcoins or whatever. I get paid an ROI on my NFTs. So in November of last year, I wanted to launch my own NFT project that paid some type of yield, but it would have just been a derivative. And that's one thing that you don't want to do. You don't have a derivative of another product. But one of the NFTs that I invested in, I doubled my money, and I used that liquidity to start providing loans on a platform called NFTFi. NFTFi, you basically have Bored Ape Yacht Club or any NFT, other sides, and you can get money, because the problem with NFTs right now is they're not liquid. So NFTFi provides that liquidity. As a liquidity provider, I was doing 30 to 120% loans, and then originally I was doing like 90-day loans. And the more experienced lenders were like, hey, you don't want to do that, because if an NFT gets bad news, you'll be stuck with an NFT that has no value and you lose your money. So I started doing 1-week loans, and that started making me realize there's some inherent problems with NFTs. They might have great utility. They might have like Eminem and the best stars, Snoop Dogg backing it, but they're worth nothing. Kind of like the US dollar. There's no intrinsic value. So listening to this fiat standard during Christmas, driving back and forth, and he hammered the gold standard was hard to sound this money. And we went to fiat currency. It was the first time in human history we degressed economically. Instead of progressing to harder money, this is the first time we went to weaker, easier money. And the fact that in the first few chapters, he hammered that point about gold and reversing and becoming weaker, another light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, that's how we solve the problem with NFTs having no inherent value. We back it with gold. So I called my co-founder. I'm like, hey, can we create a smart contract that when they mint, we automatically put gold behind the NFT, and then they can burn that NFT to claim that gold? He said, yeah, not a problem. So that's where the gold-backed assets, the NFTs, came from. And then because we're backing our gold, I wanted to explain why we're backing my gold. And that's where I started learning about sound money and the gold standard and digital assets. That's where I found out about PAX-G and everything. So that's why we also want to educate, because the main problem with financial literacy, and I think you might agree, is it's a lack of education. I think for anything, it's a lack of education. So if we're going to be giving them a gold-backed asset, I want to explain why it's important that it's backed by gold. And then I want to explain to them why it's important that we have sound money principles. And we created an entire lore of a potential future where sound money is not the monetary system, and it's the dystopian, kind of like Ayn Rand's Anthem in the future, where the governments control everything and they destroy, there's no freedom and so forth. So that lore is to say, hey, if we don't learn about sound money principles and start instituting sound money economies today, this is the potential future we could have. So
you're saying dystopian future, doesn't sound that far off.
I know it's only 2088, which is only, it's 65 years from now. So that's not too far away from our little dystopian prediction. But yeah,
we're probably close to that, or maybe even more, since 1984 was written.
Yeah,
we live in like panopticon.
Oh, it's crazy. Like when you told me about Mike Maloney, that series started in 2014. I'm watching his show every episode. I'm like, this guy's a freaking prophet. Predicted the current banking collapse and current monetary issues years ago. I'm like, holy cow, this guy saw the future. And I was just convinced. I'm like, wow. And I learned a lot more about sound money and the history of currency and money and so forth because of Mike Maloney, thanks to you sharing that. And I put his entire series and I told my entire community, I'm like, if you're going to watch one thing, you need to watch this series first to get a good foundation of what sound money is.
Well, and I think your experience with that is exactly why, we're interested in work. I think we're interested in working with you is, it's different crowds, different backgrounds. There's people that are really excited by crypto. I do see it as a team effort, that we're part of the same team against fiat. But it's exciting to see your project and the opportunity to try to reach people that, gold bugs are never going to reach.
Yeah. 100%. And then like in the crypto community I was watching videos. They have these crazy meme videos where they take scenes from like Battleship, the recent Battleship with aliens, and they start putting like little videos where it's the bear market, which is the alien ship, and the battleship is Bitcoin, and they're just hammering this alien ship. And then throughout the video, there's negatives and positives. So when Bitcoin's winning, there's like +5, +20%. When the bear market's winning, it's negative. One of the negatives, because this is a Bitcoin maxi video, was gold bugs. Gold bugs hammering. This is coming from the alien ship. Gold bugs talking crap about Bitcoin -25%. I'm like, no, don't do that. Gold should be positive 25%. It's interesting, but yeah, that's what we're doing. I think my community, I'm bringing in these Bitcoin maxis or these crypto maxis, introducing them to gold, educating them on the problem with fiat, because I didn't really understand the intricacies of. I knew I hated fiat because it's easy money, right? But as I dove into Mike's content, as I've read more, I started watching videos, reading articles, read books, Fiat Standard, Bitcoin Standard. I realized that, I lost my train of thought. Mind you, I haven't slept much. I just did a long road trip. So what was it? What was my point?
You're bringing the groups together. I mean, in a way that other people are not able to do right now.
Right. So as I was digging into both sides, I'm like, we need to work together. And that's where I came up with the solution of gold-backed digital assets being the new stablecoin and getting rid of the USDT and explaining it. It's amazing. When I posted the Mike Maloney video, about 5 or 10 people immediately watched it and like, oh my God, I had no idea how bad fiat was. We have an international community. We have people from the Middle East, Australia, and so forth. And these people from different countries, like, oh my God, I didn't realize how bad fiat was. Like my eyes are so open right now. When they watch that first episode of Mike Maloney, it's like their minds are blown. And they're realizing, wow, we shouldn't use USDT, USDC. We should buy gold. And I think just that's why I really want to push education. So I think when people realize, holy cow, that we have monopoly money right now, it's worth nothing. We completely de-anchored from gold and it's worthless. And when you look at those charts from the Fed or Fred, and you see how rapidly the M2 supply is increasing. OMG, man, like the collapse. It's I'm not sure how much longer that the fiat standard can sustain itself. We're already seeing BRICS. I think BRICS is going to cause the straight fiat with no assets backing it collapse very soon. I think whenever BRICS launches their currency, it's just going to devalue all the other fiats because they're just going to dump right into that BRICS because it's harder to sound their money.
Yeah, it's funny talking about USDT. People are like, well, we don't think they have 100% backing, dollar backing. I was like, so you're worried they don't have 100% backing of something that's completely unbacked?
Yeah.
Like, exactly. How worse could it, So we've always treated that as a hot potato. I mean, a lot of people use it to buy stuff, and that's fine. We immediately swap it for gold and silver,
Yeah, I mean, if you want to use it, that's fine. I'm gonna when I got paid in dollars, I immediately put in a Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, and silver. Like, I get rid of my cash. I want that inflation to get off my hands right away.
Yeah, it's Gresham's law in action.
Yep, yep, exactly. So, but yeah, man, I'm really excited about potentially partnering with Citizens for Sound Money as well, because I think that we have a lot in common, and I think we see a vision of the future. For me, I want to prevent what happened in Cuba to happen in America, and I think the best way to do that is through the monetary system, and introducing blockchain technology as the primary ecosystem where we use money. And I think gold backing those digital assets is really the solution to bring back a global sound money economy.
Yeah, 100% agree on what you just said there. Yeah.
Well, it makes me think of something, Jim, I think you've mentioned a lot of times, is that kind of what has pulled your focus to money is that's where kind of all other liberty stems from, is a free economic system. That the freedom to do everything else sort of comes from being able to transact and be outside of that system. You say it better than I do, but
Well, yeah, and Daniel made that point. You know, you
that's what I
you
was
can't have
saying.
personal freedom without economic freedom, and that's I forget what Austrian economist talks about that, but I 100% agree that's true for sure.
And then if we just look at monetary history, when do empires, when do countries, when do societies collapse? When they debase their money and create currency. That's when their freedoms collapse. That's when everything goes down. So, but yeah, when we have sound money, we have freedom. When it's debased and we don't have sound money, that's when we have debt and slavery.
Yeah. So your excitement about blockchain, it's interesting because I was a Ron Paul guy, and when I was running for Senate, my campaign manager is really big Bitcoin guy, and so he explained it all to me. I was like, that's freaking genius, but there needs to be some hard asset backing to it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of taken 10 years, but I've been a fan from, generically a blockchain from day one. But I think that's, Bitcoin does still hold an advantage to some in the sense of you're right. It's trustless. You really can't have an asset and yet have no trust required. I mean, there's going to have to be, you can have all the audits you want. There still has to be some level of trust. So, so that's an argument I would make. That Bitcoin may always, be a thing. But in any case, blockchain is here. It's here to stay, and I think it is part of the solution to monetary freedom. I think gold and silver are part of that. So yeah, very excited to be talking to you as someone who is far more in touch with that other side of the community than we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, when I was starting this project, I told my board and my marketing team, I said, the hardest thing the hardest thing for me to do for this project is get into the gold crowd. I'm like, you think cryptocurrency guys are elusive and secretive and private? You haven't heard or seen somebody who cares about their privacy more than a gold bug or a silver stacker. They are all about privacy, and you realize it when you watch the YouTube videos of these silver stackers and gold stackers showing no faces, completely anonymous. And I'm like, yeah, that's an elusive crowd. It's going to be hard to get in. But it's funny when you launch a gold-backed asset and you share the idea, people love it, and it's opening up doors. And I really appreciate you guys, having the opportunity for me to speak about it and potentially partnering with you guys. I think it'll be a great partnership because you're right. I think that we need to bridge the gap between the traditional sound money people and the future of sound money and bring that together, which I think is what's happening now with asset-backed digital currencies.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about the stacker crowd. These are guys that are trying to, they know the issue, so they're trying to preserve their wealth. But we're trying to get to the next level of let's get a new monetary system.
Yes.
Let's not just protect ourselves and wait for things to collapse. Let's, start competing with fiat and start having people use sound money today. So that's the mission of our organization.
And I wanted to get on the trustless thing. I just remembered something I wanted to say. With gold, you're right. There is a trust, or gold or silver. You have to trust that your safe is secure. You have to trust that the vaults are not going to lend out your money. So there is a trust aspect with gold. And there is the whole confiscation issue, which I think are the only weaknesses to physical gold and silver ownership. I think by digitizing it and having it in one of these vaults in a different foreign country, Mike Maloney touches on that a little bit. The risks with holding gold and silver and everything. But I think by digitizing it, having private vaults own it, not the government vaults, I think there's definitely security there. And I think that's how we can really usher in a global sound money economy by digitizing, because there are risks, right? And there's only so much gold you can have. And then where else can you store it if you don't put it in your house? If people know it's in your house, it doesn't matter how advanced your security system is. It doesn't matter how many guns and bullets you have in your house. If somebody wants to steal your gold, they're going to steal it.
So speaking of that, I want to state for the record, since everybody knows who I am, I don't have a big stack.
Okay.
No, honestly, I don't, because
you didn't lose it in a boating accident.
Having been a big Ron Paul supporter and being pretty visible, I'm not going to put my life savings in my house. There's no way.
Oh yeah, no.
That's what some of these guys don't get. But yeah, when I was talking about trust, I was talking mostly about the blockchain.
Oh right, yeah.
So once you put gold on the blockchain, well, you've stored your gold with someone. Therefore, it doesn't make sense to have a trustless blockchain for something that you have trusted an organization to keep. So that was my point. But I agree with the other points you're making on that. Why don't you tell us, as we wrap up here, where people can find out more, how they can contact you?
Yeah. So Meta Gold Miners Club.io is our website. Our Twitter, which we're active on, is at Meta Gold Miners. We couldn't put club because it would have been too long. So Meta Gold Miners for Twitter. MetaGoldMinersClub.io is our website. And then on our Twitter and on our website, we have our Discord link. Discord is where we do all of our communication with our community, where we do our education, where we share updates, videos, and so forth. So if you want to learn about Bitcoin and sound money, join our Discord channel, go to Twitter, our website, find our Discord link, come on in, and we'll share the entire sound money economy and answer your questions. And you can interact with me and ask me questions as well.
Yeah, and I will have to remember to get on Discord after my vacation.
Yes.
There you go.
Well, Daniel, it was really great having you. Look forward, certainly talking more. And I'm very impressed with what your background and your motivation. We have a lot in common, so eager to see what we can do to help each other.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me on, and I'm looking forward to working with Citizens of Sound Money in the future.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.